Hey there, and welcome to That's Audacious, where we share entrepreneurial stories from amazing leaders to inspire and motivate you to be bold, brave, and audacious. I'm your host, Lauren Clement, the brand navigator, here to share stories that will make you say, well, that's audacious. Hello and welcome to another episode of That's Audacious, talking with extraordinary people. Today we have an amazing guest. His name is Ben Popplestone. He's the founder of Adventure Mentors and the creator of the Adventure Mindset. He combines more than 2 decades of leadership experience in fast growth technology businesses with lessons learned from mountains, oceans, and remote adventures. I'm excited to have Ben on the show. We met briefly at the Global Speakers Summit in Cairns, had an amazing conversation with Ben, and he's now come on the show to share with us what he's done in terms of his mindset, but also helping other people become leaders of influence, and what that success from, understanding what it's like to survive in the wilderness and resilient is now a part of what you do as your business. So Ben, how did you, tell me a little bit about your backstory. How did you get into this? Tell us a little bit about your adventuring and how you've turned that into a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. It's amazing to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. Ben Popplestone, founder of Adventure Mentors, and predominantly I work with leaders and organizations who are looking to build high-performing teams, particularly in high-pressure environments and fast-growth environments, without burning their people out, so that they can build both fast and sustainable growth. And so, as you mentioned, I do that through what I call the adventure mindset, which essentially brings 2 halves of my life together. That's over 2 decades of corporate leadership in the technology space, fast growth, high pressure, and then a parallel life of chasing and experiencing adventures outdoors. So mountains, ultra trail marathons, spearfishing with sharks, all of that sort of stuff. And what I found, I guess, is that the principles I've picked up in the outdoors, in the adventures outdoors, what keeps you going at 4,000 meters on a summit is exactly what leaders need today. And so that's what I do. I use those principles to help others now.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. So I think we established very early on when I met you that I think you're a adrenaline junkie. Do you think what's sort of driven you? I mean, being in the outdoors, and I've got some experience of this, having grown up in the bush myself, and trekking and hang gliding and parachuting and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Is it a love of the outdoors, or is it more a love of adventure? What's the blend there that you have?
I think the biggest thing I've discovered, and I think this goes to the heart of leadership as well, and is why the parallel works, is because when you adventure, you find something out about yourself. And it's about who you become in the process of that. So initially you set yourself on a challenge. It might be, okay, I'm going to go up this mountain, etc. You don't know if it's going to work out. There's all that uncertainty, what you're going to experience through the process, what you're going to have to overcome through the process. Or it might be something a bit quicker and it's just taking you out of your comfort zone. So I remember when I first did a skydive, and you think, okay, not great with heights, etc., but you decide to jump out. And what I've found myself and what I've seen in others, you finish something like that and the immediate thought is, I want to go again, because something has happened to you internally. And I think it's that, there's definitely a dopamine hit for sure. It's why people call it the adrenaline junkie. But I think beyond that, it's something about who you're becoming in the process and how much you grow in that process, which I think is directly relatable to how you lead teams as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because it is interesting. And I know in the lead up to us hitting the record button on this episode, we talked about the agility that leaders have to have. And so often people might even be listening to this today and thinking, yeah, he's right. Being a leader in business or a leader of a team, man, it's an adventure. You just don't know what you're going to get every single day. Yeah. Tell us a bit more about the adventure mindset and what that does for leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So the adventure mindset, I've got a framework which I describe it as the 5 C's. So the first one is curiosity. So when you're looking at a new path, you have to be curious. You have to have a wider perspective, a wider vision, of your view to decide on where you're going to go. Second is courage. So when you've decided on a new path, to actually take the first step and to move into that, when everything feels unfamiliar, you do need some courage to do that. And then third is creativity. So you're in the middle of an adventure and you get hit by, storms or whatever happens, something comes from left field. You need a level of creativity to problem solve your way through that. Then you need commitment. So you're on a mountain, head down, in the middle of the climb, trudging upwards. The peak has disappeared from view and you can't see it. You need that commitment to really keep going and to stay the course. And then the last one is connection, because connection with other people, connection to something bigger than you is what makes it all worthwhile. So if you take that adventure mindset and you've got these storms going on around you, things happening in left field, you've got headwinds that you're battling against, etc. There's something that drives you forward, expands you into places which you haven't even considered before, that can really determine, a future which is going to be better than potentially than you'd anticipated. And then if you learn that yourself, you can pass that to others with what I call the guide mentality. So you can help others stretch their capabilities. But if you look at what an outdoors guide does, is they do two things really well. They stretch the capabilities of the people that they're with, and to do that, they need to know their existing capabilities and how they can move them into something else. But they also keep them safe. So it's not about just being reckless, but it's about safety, and in the workplace, that's psychological safety and how you stretch people into new capabilities. And when you do those two things, and people realize you're being stretched, but you're also safe to do that, then you give your commitment, you give your trust, and suddenly you've got a team that is thriving, and thriving with their soul engaged rather than selling their soul just to survive.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. What I love, funny, I was a Girl Guide, and you've just reminded me. I mean, the Girl Guide's motto, if you like, was "Be prepared."
Yes,
and that's exactly what you're talking about. Is it's in order to lead and to guide other people, they need to trust you. They need to know that whatever's going to happen, you're going to be there for them, and you can only do that if you've got those 5 C's that you're talking about.
Yeah.
What I love as well about what you're saying as well, Ben, and we obviously work a lot with people. It's our thing. We help people enter, win, and leverage business awards, and they have to have all of those things. They have to have courage to put themselves out there. We have to get a little bit creative in terms of which categories they're going for. They have to be committed. I mean, you don't just enter an award off a whim. You have to do a lot of work to go for that, and then it might take 3 months before the awards even get announced, So all of those things you're talking about in leadership are exactly the same process that we go through when we're helping people to enter awards. When it comes to leadership and some of the people you've worked with, have you got an example of someone who really, or maybe it might not even be someone you've worked with, somebody like a brand that who's a great leader, who really seems to demonstrate that adventure mindset and what they're doing with their business or their brand or their company? Anyone that we would go, oh yeah, that's exactly an example?
Well, I mean, I come from the technology space, but I guess the one that comes to mind, probably because they are an outdoor brand as well, as Patagonia, of course, and they're not just setting their sights on, growth at all costs, but they're bringing their people with them. They're bringing their customers with them. There's something about engaging the soul of the brand in that space, and everybody wants to become a part of that. So there's something about growth which is it's about attracting growth. It's about unblocking growth rather than just pushing harder all the time. And it's a challenging space out there, for all businesses. But if you really want to grow, it's about how do you engage the soul of your people, your customers, and the market, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the backstory behind Patagonia was the guy who enjoyed doing rock climbing. The guy who founded the company, he was a rock climber. And there's a bit of a tie to New Zealand here, which is quite fun because I'm from New Zealand. So when he was rock climbing, they couldn't do rock climbing in the big bulky woolen knitted jumpers because they were too bulky and so on. And he wanted something still as warm because it was quite cold, but a bit more agile, if you like, for him to move. And he discovered rugby jerseys. So,
Okay.
so he actually dealt with New Zealand firms originally to create these rugby jerseys. And he bought lots of their products and sold. That was one of the first products of Patagonia, was a rugby jersey for
I
rock
didn't
climbing.
know that.
So yeah, amazing backstory. An amazing guy. Yeah, he established that brand back in 1973 in California,
Wow.
and it's still growing
Yeah.
today. And I love the founder story, but also, as you say, the culture behind that. I think some of the other leaders that come to mind, I think, that have that same, obviously Richard Branson to me, he's an adventurer through the hot air ballooning and the, screw it, let's do it, that whole attitude of let's just try it out.
Yeah.
So
And the thing I like about Richard Branson as well is, there's a sense that when you're building a profile too, you have to really jump out of your comfort zones to build that visibility. And it doesn't, for somebody who's practiced at building a business, that visibility doesn't always happen. But you have to really, step out of your comfort zone and decide that you're going to grow personally in that space. And then you bring people with you because you're going beyond where you would normally go.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for bringing that in, because I was going to get into that next thing. Was okay, so let's talk about how this works with profile building and what you're doing at the moment to build a profile as a mentor, as a leadership expert, as a speaker. Because Richard Branson, man, he dyslexic, he hated school, he had no educational background, and yet he went out there and he backed himself. He just figured out what people wanted. So his first foray into entrepreneurship was a magazine, a school magazine that actually contained content that he knew the young people wanted. He couldn't find it anywhere else. It's a typical entrepreneur journey. There wasn't anything else out there that he liked, so he created it himself. Janine Ellis was the same. She looked for healthy juices for her kids, couldn't buy them, went and made that herself. So that kitchen table mentality, to go, I'm going to solve this problem. There's a need, I'm going to go and find a solution. So let's talk about how you're building your profile. What is it that you really want to be known for, Ben, and how are you really actively focusing on that?
So this is a relatively new journey for me, Lauren. I guess I have come out of a technology career over 25 years, 20 of those years in leading teams globally. And I've really enjoyed that. I love the technology side. I love the strategy side. I love the growth and the people side of things as well. But I guess, about a year ago, I was reflecting. I was in between. I was in a bit of a gap in my career, and I was thinking, what do I really want to do next? And it was a consideration for me. What came to mind was actually, the two halves of my life really do fit together. And when I think back to my successes in business and how I've then, taken time out to do some adventures as well, and what I've picked up from those adventures and applied them back to the growth, within the business that I'm working in, there was something that made me think others, can need this as well. And it's not just me. I've noticed this in other leaders and teams that I've worked with. When they adopt this sort of mindset of adventure, it really propels that growth. So currently I'm consulting with businesses, running some workshops on how they build, their team growth, etc., how they engage their people more. I'm doing coaching with leaders and execs around how they can build that adventure mindset and strategize, within their frame of business as well. And I'm starting to do some speaking too. And that's been a really good thing for me. I think what I found is the adventure stories that I've got, from outdoors, can really then be applied into business frameworks. And so what I want to be known for, I guess, is bringing the adventure stories to business frameworks and really underline that parallel. I think the thing that would define my success, and this may be a little way away, but it's a horizon for me, is when companies start to have adventure as one of their values, one of their corporate values. And I haven't really seen that so far. But I think that would, for me, would define that the adventure mindset has landed.
Yeah, I love that. And it is interesting, isn't it? That the whole lot, when you mention the word adventure in a corporate setting, there's a little bit of risk there, isn't it? Because you're not starting a journey, it's not a vacation, it's an adventure. Yes. And there's a certain element of fear because we just don't know what might happen. So the outcome of that, of course, is, well, that's great because it's going to build resilience in your people. It's going to help them understand that whatever life throws at them, they're going
Yeah.
to be capable of dealing with it. So
Yeah.
you are listening to the That's Audacious podcast. If you like what you're hearing, there are loads of other episodes like this with extraordinary people. You can find us on your favorite channel, and you will find links to more of those episodes below. Ben, I want to talk just briefly now about your stories. So is there a story that you love, or maybe a couple of stories you love, maybe hit us with the first one, that's something that you would probably share in one of your keynote presentations that really comes from your adventure background but relates really well to what's going on inside corporates or inside businesses where they're struggling with their leaders not pushing out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the stories that I tell is what I call the tale of two peaks. And so the first peak was Mont Blanc. I did a number of years ago, and I've done a fair bit in the Alps, but Mont Blanc was one of the summits that I did. And my partner and I we were in the valley in Chamonix for about a week. It was bad weather all week. We weren't sure if we were going to make it up to the top. There was heavy snowfall on the mountain. We got to the first hut. There's one of two, the first of two huts, and we decided to take a break. It was a complete whiteout on the mountain. And we went into the hut, and all of the other groups were in that hut with all of their guides. We were unguided, but they all had guides, and the guides were basically advising them to stop and stay the night in that hut, not to go on. It's too dangerous. Andy and I reflected. We said, okay, we're going to try. We're going to just push out a little bit and see what we can do. We ended up making it to the second hut, and then the next day we summited with a clear sky, and the other groups who had stayed in the lower hut weren't able to summit because they had too far to go the next day. So there was something there about pursuing, deciding to take a calculated risk, and mitigating factors and all of that, but pushing through the challenge to make it to the summit. And there was a driving force, to get to that summit. So some might say, okay, well, that's summit fever. But what I found was summit fever was a few years later. I was on another mountain, this time in Wales. So not nearly as big a goal for me, but I was with my wife, and it was bad weather. The light was fading fast, and we were close to the top, but my wife called it quits. She was really struggling. And instead of me deciding to say, okay, well, let's both call it quits and we'll head back down the mountain, I had that summit fever again. And I was like, no, I need to hit the top. I left her on the side of the mountain, and it took me a longer time than I expected to get to the top and get back down to her. So by that time it was dark, and she was in bits, and I, had done a lot of damage to the relationship, so I think there's a sense that you can really over focus on the targets, on KPIs, on that objective, and leave your people behind. And I've learned lessons in the corporate space as well, where I have just put that weight on the objective ahead of the people in the team that I've got, and I've lost people in the process. So there's a real parallel there to getting that summit fever in business as well, and how you actually bring your people along with you.
I love it. Summit fever, and that real balance of risk and reward. It's something that leaders are probably grappling with just about every day. Yes. And encouraging their people rather than pushing them, at the same time not losing sight of taking the whole team along with you, rather than going, hey, we made it, I'm up here, good luck everybody else. So, because is that a sign of a good leader? Do you think that it's not a question of always being in the front? It's more a question of how do we all get there together? Is that a big part of what you've achieved with your adventures as well? I
think so. And I think there's always a time when you're going to have to call, particularly in business. I've had to make some tough calls around, can we actually bring everybody with us on this? There's always going to be some of that tough call. But when you're on a mountain or when you're in a business, you do have to focus on your people, on the safety of your people. That's paramount. And then if you're focusing, what I've found is if you're focusing on their success, your success will come. If you focus on the objective ahead of their success, you're basically pushing them harder and harder, and they burn out in the process because you're not really conveying that overall purpose. Whereas when you ignite their passion, you build them with purpose, they basically give you everything that they've got, then your results will come. So it's just turning it the other way around, focus on your people and allowing them, unblocking them to succeed for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes right the way back to Richard Branson. That's exactly his approach with Virgin, isn't it? He doesn't do much in terms of, he never really focused on the customer service side of things.
Yeah.
He said, if you look after your people, they'll look after the customers.
That's
so
right.
That knock-on effect. Yeah, brilliant. Now, we are at the end of this fabulous conversation, although we could talk for hours, I'm sure. I have a question for you, which is one I ask all of my guests. Ben, if you could go back in time to any time in your life and give yourself some advice that would help you for where you are today, what would that advice be?
I would say, and I think you'll like this, it's probably around building my profile earlier. You know, the thing for me about being visible, I've always focused more on the background side of things, you know, and I've done plenty of presentations and workshops, etc. in my career, but I think actually pushing into the limelight is something that I had to overcome shyness as a child, etc. But actually driving and pushing myself into the limelight has felt a little bit uncomfortable, and I wish I just pushed into that a bit earlier.
I love it. Awesome. Isn't it wonderful to be able to look back and go, you know, you've got everything you need. Don't worry about it. Just get on and do it. Hindsight's such a wonderful superpower, isn't it?
I know.
Ben, it's been absolutely extraordinary talking to you. If you'd like to get in touch with Ben for him to come and run workshops with your team or speak at your events, please contact him. His details will be underneath this episode. Ben, it's been absolutely fabulous having you here with me on the show today. I've loved your storytelling, but also your attitude towards having the mindset of being an adventurous leader and getting out there and making it happen for you and for your team. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And remember, if you're listening, you have everything that you need to be well-known, well-paid and wanted. Get out there and be bold, brave and audacious. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the That's Audacious podcast. Remember, there's no place for modesty in business, and you do deserve to be well-known, well-paid and wanted. For more episodes, please subscribe to the podcast on your favourite channel or follow us online. The links are in the description below.